Hello everyone. If you saw last video, I had a great time with the Nova. After doing the tuning, the car just woke up basically. The response is just so much better, cruising is so much smoother, and of course wide open throttle is just so much stronger. I mean, from idle to wide open throttle, when I did those burnouts, it was instant acceleration. It was almost as if the tires were wet. It was just totally an awesome experience, and I had a great time. I have yet to see how much fuel mileage I'm getting out of each tank, but with this video I'm going to ensure that while I'm doing the driving all over trying to get to the goal of my fuel mileage, I'm able to do it in a comfortable setting, and that is with air conditioning. It's getting warmer, and well, I'm going to be cruising a lot more in the Nova, and I want to do it feeling comfortable. So let's get started with the video. Back in video updates 87 through 97, I show a 10-part series on the installation of the Vintage Air conditioning system in my 74 Nova. And I did everything to the point where I put a vacuum on the system to ensure that there was no leaks. I did not put refrigerant. Well, now is the time that I'm going to be putting refrigerant, and I can proceed with the rest of the installation. So you can pretty much call this video part 11 to that 10-part series on the Vintage Air installation. So in the manual it states that it needs 1.8 pounds of refrigerant, and well, looking for refrigerant, I found these cans at Walmart. And here's the good thing: the can says that it's a 12 ounces net weight, and on the back of the can it says it contains 12 ounces of R134a refrigerant. What does that mean? That means that this can only has refrigerant in it, and that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to put any oil or any UV dye or any of the synthetic stuff they put in those cans. I wanted to ensure that I know what's getting installed in my system. So I got my own oil and I got my own UV dye to check for leaks. Now, since the can is 12 ounces, well, I need to convert that 1.8 pounds to ounces so that I can see the total amount of ounces I need for my system, and that came out to 28 ounces. So I bought 3 cans. So you might be thinking, well, if each can is 12 ounces, well, 3 cans is 36 ounces. That's a little bit too much. Well, here's the good thing: these cans are self-sealing, which means that I can pretty much take what I need from a can, and I won't have to worry about losing the rest. So here's my workstation for the installation of the refrigerant. So, as I stated, these cans are self-sealing, but in order to make them work, you need to get an adapter. And here's the adapter. Pretty much it's a valve that can open and close at will. You pretty much screw it on the can, and once you put your hose on, it'll open the can. Now, to close the can, you can pretty much just take that off, or you can just use this on the gauge to close off this valve, and that way it will stop the flow of refrigerant into the system. So how am I going to get 4 ounces out of this can without overcharging or undercharging? Well, I'll use a scale. So basically what I'm going to do is, after I hook this up and get it all ready and purge the system, I'll take a look at the scale and write down the number that I get off that scale. Then I'm going to subtract 4 ounces from that number, and once I open the valve on my manifold gauge set, I will keep an eye on that scale until 4 ounces has been subtracted from the original number as far as the weight goes that I started with. That's how I'm going to get my 4 ounces from this can, and when I get to that 4 ounce mark, all I got to do is close that valve, and that will stop the flow of refrigerant, therefore allowing me to get to my 28 ounces of refrigerant I need for my air conditioning system. Other tools that I will be using to ensure that this installation process goes smoothly: I'm going to be using a thermometer. Now, as you can see, it's 82 degrees outside, and it's zero humidity, at least in this garage. And I do have the door open, and of course the door open there, so it's pretty much ambient air temperature. Now another tool I'm going to be using is another gauge inserted inside my vent system. And what I did was I closed off all the vents, that vent, this vent, and the driver's side vent, so that all of the air conditioning air that's going to be coming out of my vintage air conditioning system, it's going to be focused on only this vent. And as you can see, I have a thermometer in that vent, and well, currently inside this vent it's 100 degrees, right about 100 degrees. So it's pretty hot in that vent. So when I turn on my system and I put it on code, and of course adjust the air speed and ensure that the air comes out of the dash, I'm going to be looking to see how much that decreases. So I got my engine running. I started the process. Now when you start the process, let me shut this off. When you start the process, you want to ensure that you do not open the high pressure side. Do not open that. Only open the low pressure side when you start introducing your refrigerant. Okay? So I started doing that, and instantly it started putting in the refrigerant, and my compressor, as you can see, has turned on. So I now have pressure in the system. So that's a big plus. So now I'm going to go through the process and adding the refrigerant into the system. And as you can see, this can is getting freezing cold. You can see the frost on that can. So it's getting in there. And another one of my tools is I got my hair dryer here, and what I'm doing is every once in a while I'll shake the can as per the instructions on the can, but I will also heat the can up to allow this refrigerant to expand and therefore go into my lines. So I ensure that I'm getting the refrigerant as quickly as possible. So I'm going to continue this process, and we'll see what the temperature is going to drop to as far as inside the car. I'll give you a look-see right now. I got my vents blowing, and still no cigar. Still needs a little bit of time. But then again, I don't even have a can in there yet. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. It takes an average of about 15 minutes for each can, 10 to 15 minutes for each can to get introduced into the system. So it's going to be a little while. We'll have a look-see once I got it all filled. Okay, I got 2 cans in there, and the compressor now turns on and off. You can see it just turned on. Let it run a little bit. I'll let it shut off. There you go, shut off. Here's the pressure so far. About on this gauge right here, it's going up to about 175 right now. Let's see where it tops off. Almost 200. And then for the low side, well, it just shut off now. Let's see if it'll turn on. And this is with just 24 ounces. There we go. So the low side is roughly about 20. Yeah, roughly about 20 psi. So for my last can, I got about 16.72 on the scale. So you see it's all hooked up, ready to go. And all I got to do now is, and I already purchased the system, all I got to do is just open up this valve, and when that gets to 12.72, that should be my cue to close the valve and let it stop. So I'm going to take care of that right now. Let's see what it feels like on the inside. Got a couple thermometers in there, so let's see. So I had closed the windows just to see how cool it'll actually get in this car, and almost 50 degrees. 50 degrees. That's how cool it can get in this car, and I have to say that the air that's coming out these vents are pretty cold. I mean, they're really cold. So I have to say that it's a success. Very, very cold. So I'm gonna use this gauge here. I just had this sitting down in the seat, and it's about 68 degrees with it just laying here on the seat. But if I put it up to the vent, let's see how cold it'll get. Okay, so I've been holding this thermometer for, I don't know, about 2 minutes now, and it's stabilized right around, there it is, it went down just a little bit more. 50.9 degrees, that's the air temperature coming out of these vents. Let's see if, yeah, about 50.9 to 51 degrees. And then of course this thermometer, it says about the same thing. About 51 degrees, 52 degrees. I guess that would be 51, is right next to the 50 mark. As you can see, let's see. Yeah, right at the 50 mark. So, 50 degrees. Well, it's official. The 74 Chevy Nova now has air conditioning. And it's a great feeling to feel that air come out nice and cold. It's going to be pretty good when I take the Nova out in the summertime. Some of the things that I thought that I would encounter as a problem was normally when in the cars that I've had, I've never had an 8-cylinder car. I've always had 4-cylinder cars. And normally when the AC compressor turns on, the RPMs jump up. In this 8-cylinder car, I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that it's an 8-cylinder as opposed to a 4-cylinder, and it has obviously more power at idle than a 4-cylinder would, possibly. I'm not sure if that's even the case, but when the compressor would turn on, the RPMs would only drop roughly about 50 RPMs. Hardly noticeable. So I don't even need to worry about having the RPMs go up every time the compressor shuts on. So that was a big plus. I took the car out for a test drive, and the Nova drives just the same with the air conditioning on or with the air conditioning off. It puts no noticeable load on the engine that I can feel, and the car just drives awesome. I did measure the air temperature as I was driving, and it went down to 49 degrees. So 1 degree drop. It could be because, you know, now we're getting nice cool airflow on the condenser in the front of the car. But either way, 50 degrees is a big improvement over, you know, ambient temperatures when it comes to summertime and here in Southern California. So just to briefly touch up on what I was looking for when I was doing the AC refrigerant install on the gauges. I was looking for roughly about anywhere between 20 and 35 psi for the low side, and for the high side I was looking for right around 175 to 225. And you know, with all the research I did on the internet, that seems to be the average of what you're looking for when you're filling up. Now, according to the pressure chart that I printed out, it definitely shows that it all has to do with temperature. So the higher the temperature, the outside temperature, well, it's going to have a direct effect on the air conditioning system pressures. And well, if the oils or whatever, the stuff in the lines of the air conditioning system is hot, well, the pressures are going to be higher. So the hotter it is, the higher the pressures. But just as a general guideline from the research I have done, that's what I was looking for, and that was what I was aiming for when I was doing the fill up. So, hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching.